The message arrived at 2 a.m. Pictures, videos, little explosions of someone else's happiness shoved into my phone. My wife had been with him for 2 years. My best friend. I pressed delete, then stared at the ceiling until dawn. That night I learned how quiet devastation can sound. If you've ever had your world flip because of betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe. Stick around for this one. It's not a revenge fantasy. It's a real, messy, heartbreaking story about why I stayed and what finally started to heal me. I married for a promise. 7 years, 2 little girls, church on Sunday. The kind of vows you say while glowing in front of family photos. We weren't a perfect couple. Who is? But there was a rhythm. School runs, bedtime stories, vacations that were more chaotic than romantic. I loved her. I loved the idea of our life together. I believed in the covenant we made in front of God and people. When pain started, it didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It arrived in small, confusing ways. Missed dinners that were explained away, the softening of the I love you into a practical don't forget the milk. A phone held closer than a hand. I wanted to be a good husband and a good father. My daughters were the center of everything. I made choices with them in mind, even the choice to stay. It wasn't one betrayal. It was 5. By the time 2018 rolled around, patterns I thought were one-offs turned into a series of disappearances. Affairs that stitched themselves into our marriage like a secret, ugly seam. He was not some charming mystery. He was a jerk. He knew how to hurt me. He sent me pictures and videos. He wanted me to leave. For a long time, she came home. She left. We tried therapy. I tried to be patient. I told myself forgiveness is holy. The Bible calls us to love and forgive. But forgiveness isn't a magic eraser. It's a process. For a while I leaned on talk therapy. Later, EMDR sessions that felt like picking glass out of my mind. I drank to numb fragments of memories. I pretended I was okay at school pickups and church potlucks. The gaslighting was the worst. When I tried to voice the ache, she'd turn a phrase into a blade. I'm allowed to tell you my opinions. You're overreacting. Why do you always make this about you? Suddenly, I was the bad guy for being hurt. That slow erosion. It crushes dignity in the quietest places. I didn't know things were as deep as they were until September/October of 2020, after she moved out in August. It was like someone pulled a curtain, and I finally saw the room behind it. The weeks she didn't have our daughters, she spent with him. The pictures he sent were proof, not just of their time, but of the deliberate cruelty behind showing them to me. He wanted me gone. He wanted me broken. When she came back that December, we tried again. We started the long, slow climb through therapy and the wreckage. Yet even as we rebuilt certain seasons, the calendar month that carried those memories hit like a wave. I got quiet. I stopped talking. She noticed, asked, and then turned it into another argument. The cycle repeated. I bottled it up because I was terrified of making the wrong sound and losing her again. This isn't a story about theatrical revenge. There are no dramatic public confrontations, no viral videos. My revenge was quieter. But for me, it was everything. Boundaries. One day I realized the person I had been. Ashamed, stalking old friends, scanning social media to see if he'd pop up. That version of me was being manufactured by their choices. The photos, the insults, the silences, they were all weapons I was giving power to. I started with small, deliberate acts. I blocked numbers. I deleted social media profiles. I stopped accepting the bait that made me revisit the wound every hour. I told myself the truth out loud. 5 affairs were not my failure to fix her. They were her choices. I unfriended mutual friends who were reminders. I stopped performing forgiveness for their comfort and started practicing it for my sanity. There was no grand confrontation where I screamed the truth to a room full of acquaintances. I told my story in therapy. I spoke it into a safe space. I confronted her on one late night, not to shame, but to lay out the facts calmly, firmly. "You chose to do this more than once," I said. She replied with the same defenses, the same lines about opinions. But saying it aloud, naming it, took away some of its power. I was no longer the man who was surprised by things. I was the man cataloging them. Me. Why did you do it? Why keep choosing him? Her? I don't know. People change. Things happen. Me. You knew how it made me feel. You sent me things. Did you want me to hurt? Her. You make it sound like I plotted it. I didn't. Me. You did it 5 times. You left. You came back. I kept trying. In sitting with that, I realized the answers weren't neat. The emotional terrain was full of jagged stones. The ache lived behind every smile I tried to fake at the kids' soccer games. I could describe the smell of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight looked through the kitchen window. It all felt like a stage set in which I was learning new lines. Protect the kids, don't lose yourself. The real turning point wasn't an argument or a discovery. It was the slow realization that I was better for my daughters when I wasn't drowning. When she was gone, I played more. I laughed more. I was not a perfect father, but I was present. I did not let the past be the architect of every moment with them. That clarity gave me courage. To stop being sucked into monitoring his online footprint. To stop letting friends dictate my day by their take on what happened. I began to rebuild identity in small ways. A book read before bed, a new routine at the gym, a therapist's advice that sounded like kindness finally offered to myself. The payoff wasn't humiliation or public spectacle. It was the moment I refused to be the punchline anymore. It arrived like this. She snapped at me in front of the kids, an old recrimination disguised as a joke. For years I would have bargained, explained, or numbed. This time I simply stood up, walked out to the driveway, and sat on the hood of the car until I could breathe. I felt nothing explosive, no dramatic applause, just the calm of someone who has chosen themselves. Later that week I signed up for a support group. I started EMDR again for the nightmares that snippets of photos left behind. I watched how, over months, my reaction softened. The man who used to stalk the other guy's accounts was gone. In his place, someone who could talk about his pain without collapsing into it existed. That felt like justice. The theft of my life didn't become a life sentence. Her reaction when I stopped engaging was telling. She no longer had an audience to manipulate. The power she once used evaporated not because I outplayed her, but because I stopped being played. Shock. Regret? Maybe. It didn't matter. The measure of victory was my quiet, steady presence for my daughters, and the slow return of my own voice. If you're listening to this from a place of betrayal, you don't have to decide today. Forgiveness isn't a requirement. Staying isn't weakness, and leaving isn't the only path to freedom. The bravest thing I did was admit the truth out loud, to myself, to a therapist, to my daughters, and then do the small, steady work to not let pain steer my life. If this story resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Drop a comment. Have you ever stayed for the kids or left to protect them? Subscribe for more real stories that don't always end in fireworks, but can end in healing.